everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Southern U Podcast. I am Taylor McMurtry, joined as always by the man, the myth, the AL Deer legend himself, Mr. Matt Brock, also known as Anthrax on this trip.
Yeah.
And Mr. Jeremy Ferguson of Tutland / whatever else. Wildlife Consulting Services. Sorry, y'all. My brain's not working today.
That's fine.
But today,
been a lot going on.
Yes, it is. A lot going on, and we're going to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
We have a very special episode today, and for a lot of different reasons, one of which just being the location and the company.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Our guest of honor is Mr. Matt Moore, also biologist here in Texas. So, Matt, this is ragtag bunch of guys you're hanging out with today, and
for sure.
So it's again we've had a blast down here at a undisclosed location, and Texas is a large place, so we can't give away too many secrets, but it's been a absolute blast down here hanging out with you so far, man.
Yeah, we appreciate it. It's been fun the last couple of days showing y'all everything that South Texas has to offer. We've gotten out and seen a lot of wildlife, seen a lot of deer, seen some very nice deer here at the ranch, and also had the opportunity to get out and chase a few javelinas and pigs and stuff with your bows. So it's been real nice to host y'all guys.
Stay tuned for that. Mm-hmm. We have some Nat Geo quality footage coming at you here pretty soon.
At least Taylor does.
Yeah.
The rest of us
don't
know how to run cameras.
No, it's awesome. But yeah, like I said, it's something we have all been kind of looking forward to, and kind of alluded to a little bit on the podcast. Didn't talk about it too much.
Matt and I have been trying to put this together for a decade.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. Also got something special coming up the next couple of days. We have a research capture with Texas A&M Kingsville and the Caesar Clayburgh Wildlife Research Institute. Here on the ranch that I work for, we fund some research projects, and we're going to let y'all help participate and collect some data from a helicopter capture. So that's going to be
guys,
something new for you guys.
Cannot wait.
So for those of you who are not smart like me, I just want to break this down and give it to you in layman's terms. There's going to be a helicopter that's flying around this place, and there's going to be someone shooting a net gun out of said helicopter, capturing deer, and letting us
touch them,
collect data. Yep. Cannot wait. It is going to be an absolute crazy experience. So
yeah,
true bucket list item for me.
Oh man, I mean, amazing.
Yep.
Which I guess that's just kind of what we were gonna, if it's okay, maybe pick your brain about. It's just kind of some management practices that when we've talked about this stuff. This is what our podcast is kind of founded on, is all things land related, one of those being wildlife management and habitat management, those sort of things. So being able to be here, I think one thing that a lot of people will push back on when you start talking about management strategies and different things to do and things to implement is we'll go, well, yeah, but that's Texas. Right. But that's fill in the blank. Mm-hmm. And so I think if it's okay, I'd like for you maybe just to give a little brief history on you and, how these knuckleheads over here, but also, what stuff you guys implement here, because you have a unique perspective also you're a biologist, but also, you're Alabama guy too. So,
correct.
Alabama guy, and now you're in Texas. And so, kind of compare and contrast the differences between those two states and what things don't change, what things are kind of generalized or unanimous across the board.
Yeah, just start a little history on me. Grew up around Selma, Alabama. My family was a cattle farm and at one time hog farms. So grew up doing that and was interested in getting into vet school. So that's one of the reasons I started in wildlife at Auburn University, and figured out I didn't want to go to college for 7 years and take a bunch of math. So I stayed with the wildlife program, and then about my senior year in wildlife, I figured out I needed some more schooling or some help getting a job. So I wound up doing an internship in Texas, which got me in connection with some of the professors, Dr. Charles D. Young at Texas A&M Kingsville. Kind of got my toe in the door there and applied for grad school. And then I came out to Texas for 2 years and did a grad project on a long-term project that's been really well published. A bunch of deer biologists in the Southeast are very familiar with it, the Comanche Faith Research Project, looking at differences in habitat conditions by different densities of deer and also whether or not supplemental feed was provided. And I was part of that 15-year-long project. I got in on the early part of that and got my master's degree working on cameras. So I tested the Jacobson method, which is developed in Mississippi State with looking at trying to calculate populations of deer in the southeast. But we used it out here in Texas on some pens where we knew the population of deer, and then trying to test and see if there were differences in our known populations and what the Jacobson method gave us. So pretty much for my grad project, I worked on camera stuff with these pens with known numbers of deer, and what we found out was that in South Texas, we were overcounting bucks and undercounting does because bucks were dominating the bait sites, which is kind of opposite of what they found in Mississippi, because if you think about the Southeast, most of your populations are kind of doe heavy, probably 2-to-1, 3-to-1 doe to buck ratios. And another thing we did is we compared helicopter surveys, which are really good at getting sex ratios because everything runs from the helicopter the same way. So we get males and females. And then I ran cameras on the ground and compared that. And if you combine the two survey methods, you really kind of get a better count in South Texas because you can get your number of bucks, individual bucks from cameras, and then use that. Say if you have a 2-to-1 doe to buck ratio and you count 50 bucks, well, then you probably have about around 100 does. So that was kind of my schooling. Went to Auburn undergrad university, so learned about the Southeast and management. And me and Jeremy actually interlapped at Auburn University a good bit. I don't know if we had many classes together, but
not many.
We ran together in the same circle of friend group, and I knew a lot of the same people. And through going to Southeast Deer Study Group every year, met Matt Brock, the legend. And a couple of others.
Golly, man, it's just got to go away.
But we know a bunch of the same people. I had applied for a job at Mississippi Parks and Wildlife at one time, knew Land Wolf and Chad Dacus, a bunch of guys that he had worked with in previous operations. So, that's what got me to Texas. But now I'm the manager of a large private ranch in South Texas. We're 40,000 acres, so we're a large property. We heavily feed and manage roughly around 12 to 13,000 acres of the ranch ourselves individually for our hunters. And then we lease out about 16,000 acres to other groups of hunters, and I help them with their deer numbers and kind of focus on what their goals are for that leased pasture. But, there's a lot of stuff that overlaps what we do here with the Southeast, and there's a lot of stuff that you can't do in the Southeast. So, it just depends on each subject. But
sure. What you're saying is it depends.
Yeah, that's what everybody hates to hear, but that's the truth, and each property specific. We're 40,000 acres, and we have 14 different types of soils in this place. So it's really like managing different ranches. And then we have some fully high-fenced units. Our smallest high-fenced pasture is 1,100 acres. Our largest is 3,500 acres. But out of that 13,000 acres that we're managing ourselves, roughly 8,000 acres is open and considered low fence for Texas. So we really... It's like managing multiple properties, even though we're all on the same property here.
Mm-hmm. Sure. That's cool, man. I think that the common misconception, at least, again, I'm the only one in the room that's not a biologist, but I think, at least from my perspective, and a lot of people have similar opinions, when you think Texas, you think, well, the only reason they have big deer or the only reason they have, the numbers of wildlife that they have is because they just feed them and feed them and feed them and feed them. And I think... especially spending some time that I've spent around Matt and Jeremy, really kind of opened up my eyes even to go like, that's not necessarily the truth. There's a lot of, like when you've mentioned earlier, when you have a rainy season, you get, good rainfall, that can make a huge difference in not just the numbers, but also the quality of game here.
Yeah, rainfall, we are in a semi-arid desert ecoregion, is what we're classified at. We're in the Golden Triangle of Texas, which is a large, several counties, Webb, Dimmitt, Maverick, from Del Rio to Pearsall down to Laredo. It's called the Golden Triangle, and it's historically, before modern deer management came along, it's where the large deer in Texas were always grown. But it wasn't every year. It was in select rainfall years is when they would kill abnormally large animals down here. And that's still what we see now, even with all of our management. You can't fight Mother Nature, So if we get above average rainfalls, particularly from March to May, we will see a 10% to 15% increase in our average antler score. And our top end, our outliers, that's where you really see the difference, as your top end, antlers are distributed in a bell curve everywhere across the whitetails range, and depending on your soil, that bell curve goes up or down. But down here, a really wet spring means a really great fall. So it can be a good thing when you've got wet spring, you start looking for the fall. And then again, it can be kind of a bad thing if you have a really dry spring. You're kind of already fretting what's going to show up at your cameras and stuff in the fall.
Right. Get depressed.
Yeah, a little bit.
not looking forward to what's coming.
And also fawn crops. So we're very driven by fawn crops, because if we're not producing fawns this year, we can't shoot deer in 5 years. We can't shoot mature deer. So rainfall really affects our whole management scheme. But the supplemental feed, which we do provide, that helps us kind of level that playing field, at least keep the adults alive, where we can wait for those good conditions to happen.
Gotcha.
So, but with our soils, we have pockets where we still see on the ranch where we have larger antlers on these little micro soil climate regions and stuff like that. We'll see, there's always a good deer in this spot. Well, why is that? It's probably in a drainage, a little bit better soil, stuff like that.
Gotcha. I got you. Well,
that's cool.
That's cool. I mean, as far as like when you go back home and you like you said, around Selma, which traditionally for the state of Alabama is usually pretty good. It's a good
black
area.
belt.
Yeah, black belt's a pretty good place to try to grow off wildlife. What differences do you see when trying to manage property there versus somewhere like here? I mean, is it all basically the same principles, or is there things you've got to sort of tweak and change as you go?
There's always things you got to tweak and change. The main difference in the southeast is just the property size. I mean, a whitetail buck's average home range size in the southeast is anywhere from 500 acres to 3,000 acres. And, and most average property sizes in the southeast are probably under 200 acres, less than 100 acres, really, on hunting outers. Here in South Texas, we're 40,000 acres, but we're kind of a small ranch on some of the neighbors. There's some neighboring ranches that are up over 100,000 acres. So that control is the big thing. So the other big thing is just age. I mean, even our management deer here, we have a different philosophy on management. We're all native. We don't do deer breeding. We do have high fences, but we're all native deer. We never brought in a deer from anywhere else. But even our management deer, most years we're shooting 5.5-year-old and older deer. We're trying to let them express the traits that they have before we make a harvest decision.
Right.
Yeah. And, we're not really worried about genetics as far as culling for genes, because you can't control the female side of the population. That's kind of controversial to hear.
I was about to say, could you say that again real quick?
Say it for the folks in the back.
Yeah, make sure everybody hears that.
Say it again.
On a wild population of deer, you cannot control the female side, which is 50% of your genetics coming from. So even on a place like this ranch here, which we produce, multiple 170s a year, harvest multiple 170s a year, but we're not worried about genetics. There was a study done with the Texas A&M Kingsville with the Comanche Ranch where they did a 15-year culling study. They culled heavily with helicopters in one pasture. They kind of culled just the middle age and older age class, and then they also culled had a control pasture. They didn't do anything. And after 15 years, the average Boone and Crockett score was the same across all three treatments.
Yeah.
A lot of people were debating the findings of that study, but it comes down to you can't control the females, and even with helicopters, you cannot harvest the bucks before breeding season. You cannot have enough stand time, especially when you get like a 1-to-1 sex ratio. Everything has opportunity to breed, and that's one reason we don't even worry about it. So when we shoot a management deer or a cull deer, it's because we don't want to feed that deer anymore, and we want those resources to go to other younger deer so that they can express their potential.
Right.
And that's the only scenario where I have encouraged culling, and also it's pretty well useless in a free range environment too.
Yeah.
I mean, even in a free range environment, yes, they're consuming resources that other deer with superior genetics could be consuming, but deer also have the ability to move and follow resources in a wild setting. Whereas, if you're pumping protein feed to them. Here, you've only got so many mouths you want to feed inside of an enclosure.
Exactly. You have a budget. You want.
That's right.
You don't want to spend more than X amount of dollars, so you got to trim the herd.
Resource management.
Yep. It's resource management. That's exactly what it is.
Well, I mean, I think you said something in the truck earlier, and I just never really thought about it like this. But you're like, if you say there's this particular age class of buck, and it just it's not showing you what you want to see as far as what's on its head.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, you go through a series, however, a year, 2 years, whatever, of culling out these specific deer. Well, at some point, you should, if it worked, all right, I've culled all these deer out, now I don't have to do it anymore. But it doesn't work that way. You know what I mean?
I know some very high-end ranches down here that have been culling for 20 years, and they still cull every spring. They still shoot spikes and 8 points at the beginning of every season. And, you can change your standing crop. You can change what you see in the field. Like, hey, man, everyone wants to do active management. Everybody wants to have something to do, and they want to feel good because, hey, I shot that 8-pointer, and now there's not going to be any more 8-pointers. But, with modern DNA studies from some of the research projects we've found, we've done a 15-year project looking at 2 different types of management with 2 different types of pastures here at this ranch. And with all the DNA stuff, we've actually have more questions than we have answers because, I mean, if you think about it, or, if you look at genetics of humans, are you the same height and weight as all your brothers and sisters? You're not. But a lot of people want wildlife to be like that. Are you the same height as your granddad? And it's just genetics don't work that way. Yes, having big antlers, in theory, hopefully, if they have most of the breeding, then you'll have more chances for offspring to have bigger antlers. But with modern DNA studies, I think the King Ranch did a study where the most successful buck in a year produced 6 offspring. So it's not that they're out there breeding the whole herd.
Right.
So especially once you get your sex ratios more in line, it's 1 to 1. And even in the Southeast, if it's 3 or 4 to 1, then all the bucks are going to have multiple chances to breed.
And I've tried to explain to people, that defining dominance within a deer herd really can't be done because all bucks are going to have opportunities to breed.
Exactly.
And
they're all individuals, too.
Yeah, and when you look at antler inheritability, it's really not predictable. Like, you can't look at a deer that's 200 inches and has 12 to 14-inch tines and say, well, his offspring are going to have that, or a wide rack, because oftentimes he may never produce an offspring with 12 to 14-inch tines. And that's what's been brought out in the research as well.
Right.
That it's really not that predictable unless you're completely controlling both the sire and the dam side in a controlled setting.
Right, which is why deer breeders have such success. They can grow those 300-inch deer because they're line breeding and have lineages just like purebred cattle.
Exactly. Yep.
But it's not the case here. And so I think that's just kind of thought it was an interesting point that even a place like this, even here, you're going, hey, if culling worked, we should be able to do it once, and then you shouldn't have to do it anymore. But that's not really how it works. So
right, correct, yeah, or for several years, and then you should start having less and less. We shoot spikes, the spike issues. That's the thing in the Southeast. We will shoot spikes if our herd we have too big a deer herd and we need to harvest some males. We'll shoot spikes in some years, but that's only rarely 1 out of every 5 years when we don't have enough adult deer to harvest. So, majority of years, a ranch like this, we're producing really nice top end deer. Do we shoot spikes? Not regularly. It's just we would rather. You have to ask yourself what your guests and would rather shoot. And here, we don't sell many hunts. We sell a few hunts to help pay the fade bill, but it's less than a half a dozen a year. So the majority of our hunters here are friends, family, and business clients of the owners. You have to be invited to this place. You can't buy a hunt.
right.
And what we found out, we did try to cull hard for a few years. I've actually been on this property for 14 years now that I've been running this ranch. And for several years when we first started, we did cull hard on the older age class, more for feed, like we said. But we got out there, and the guests weren't having as good a time because we would go out and you'd see a lot of young deer, and then you'd see a lot of mature deer that were trophies that they couldn't shoot. Well, we didn't really have much value on those cull bucks until they were missing. Turns out people like to shoot animals. They like to have the opportunity to harvest stuff. And if there's nothing out there that's mature except for trophies, they weren't allowed to harvest. They weren't having as good a time.
Right.
So,
No doubt. Jeremy, Matt, I was going to lean on you guys a little bit and see if there's anything specific you want to throw that Matt's way when it comes to.
Well, I have just found it interesting, and Brock and I talked about it, kind of watching a bunch of javelinas and stuff running around the other morning. The principles here are the same.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got to have pretty sizable land to be able to manage a population. It takes resources to do that. It takes age and nutrition.
Yeah,
I mean that's the big principle.
It's habitat and trigger restraint.
Yeah, it's not rocket science. It's age. You gotta let them grow to the maturity, and then, like I said, you gotta have the feed to them here in this, which we do supplemental feed, which is a big thing that a lot of people want to do in the Southeast, but food's not always limited on certain properties, because of our dry seasons. That's what we heavily do the supplemental feed to bump that up.
And in the Southeast, if you get over toward Louisiana, Mississippi, and from there eastward, rainfall is not as big of an issue.
No.
Right. Even in drought years, you're looking at maybe a 5% decrease in antler score rather than 15 or 20. So
right.
It's not as big of an issue. But I mean, as far as y'all, I mean. It is simple. It is so simple. Age, I don't worry about genetics anywhere. Anywhere in the country, I don't worry about genetics. You can grow deer to maturity anywhere and let them express whatever potential they have given the soil characteristics of that site.
And you're going to have good deer.
And you're going to have good deer. Now, whether a good deer in your area is 125 or 200, it doesn't matter. You're still going to be able to grow mature, high-quality deer for your area as long as you can, produce. And to me, it's habitat comes first, simply because that's what I enjoy getting my hands on.
Right.
Correct the habitat, then we can worry about age structure.
Right.
Get the habitat there first.
And that is one big difference between us and the Southeast. We're dependent on rainfall. So we do some mechanical manipulations of the range. We do root plowing, and which is taking a big V rake behind a dozer and clipping the roots and then rake it. And then also we've done some disking, habitat disking.
For our listeners, what's the purpose of that? You're trying to promote more herbaceous material in a wet year, right?
Right. Some soils that have been compacted by years and years of cattle grazing, overgrazing. We're trying to loosen the soils to release nutrients, for forb growth, stimulate forb growth. Same thing a fire does in the Southeast. We're trying to stimulate forb growth or even promote grass production. We do have cattle on the ranch, and we're trying to do that. And in extremely dry summers, our average temperature for July and August is around 105 every day. So if we don't have any ground cover, that's what the grass cover for. That's really great for helping our fawns have a thermal cover.
Yep. Right.
Promoting thermal cover, which also the mesquite and some of the habitat, but we're trying to up for some fawns, something for them to hide in from the sun, and as well for coyotes, promote stuff of that nature. So, that's more the habitat stuff that we can do. But South Texas is its own little environment. It's very much driven by rainfall. And, they've been studying we were fortunate enough to have a lot of summer rains and had 3 different hatches of quail this summer. And as y'all guys have seen riding around here the last couple of days, quail numbers are outrageous.
Yes, it's phenomenal.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
And last year you would have seen a third of the numbers we've seen, And I hate to say it, but there's been a lot of quail research done down here for 40 years, and all they found out so far pretty much is that rainfall equals quail production.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot that you can do to promote quail growth. You can keep adults, same deal. You can kind of keep adults alive by some on the margins with some habitat stuff, but unless it rains, you're not going to get production.
Right.
No, and also it's kind of cool. Just sidebar here. Bobwhite quail, which is like a lot of the Southeast has, but also the scaled quail, the blue
are beautiful.
quail.
They are a beautiful
man.
bird.
Really cool.
Yeah, and we're fortunate enough to have both species here on the ranch, and roughly probably 50-50 to 60% bobs to 40% scaled quail or blue quail. But they're fun to look at, and they're a little different acting. They don't like to flush; they like to run.
They remind me of a pheasant. The way they like to run. It's just, by gosh, you get on them.
Get out of here.
You may chase them half a mile before you can
before they flush up.
One of the things I found interested riding around talking was us looking at some of these old bucks, and you made the comment that y'all's management philosophy is if you're not losing a few that's just dying of old age, then probably not doing things exactly, the way y'all would do them here. But that kind of struck a chord with me at home. It's right the opposite, man. Everybody is so terrified of losing a deer, they're not able to kill it.
Yep.
Right.
They would rather kill it at 2 or 3 than chance losing it
to old age.
Yeah. Which is just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, I mean, we're fortunate enough we're not trying to make money off of the hunting operations here, but that's most of the Southeast. Mm-hmm. Most property owners there are not they're not selling hunts.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. They're not leasing the property. You have to mean it. You have to. We've got out here by our skin and shit. I've showed y'all some very nice deer over 180, several of them that have died of old age. Mm-hmm. And that's just our philosophy. We would be way more conservative on harvest, and we would much rather have a deer we lose in the brush than the worst thing we can do is shoot one too young.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's the worst thing we can do is before it reaches maturity. We'll go into a different subject, well, how do you know how old a deer is? Well, we've done some research projects. Y'all have seen some of that this week where we have ear tags. We had a large-scale, long-term project going on for about 15 years where we tagged fawns at the year of birth. Either we walked and caught them in the summer or we caught them with helicopters in the fall when they were fawns. You could, no doubt, this is a fawn.
Tell. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Put ear tags in them and let them go their whole life. And, y'all have been able to, even this week, we've seen some 11, 12-year-old bucks, which is outrageous.
Yep.
But I can show you 4, 5, 6-year-olds standing next to each other, and not all of them look exactly the same.
Right.
So,
well, it's going back to genetics. Like, you don't expect if you took 100 high school football players, they're not all the same height, they're not all the same weight, and they're all the same age.
Exactly.
So it's the same thing in the deer world.
And you really have to see that. You have to have a lot of deer, which that is one of the benefits of South Texas is that the deer are visible. We can corn down here. We use corn as a hunting method, and so you get to see all the deer in line. It really strikes you when you do see a 2-year-old stand next to a 3-year-old, next to a 5-year-old. Mm-hmm. But even when we're hunting the pastures, that's just one research project in the 1,100 acres pasture that we do that. On the main ranch, I use the same principles. We don't. I have a hard time telling a guest that deer's 4 years old. I usually say that deer's 4 or 5. Put it in a 2 age group, and you're probably still not 100% correct, but you're more correct. Or 5+. That deer's mature.
Yeah, And what I find interesting is, in a lot of the Southeast, there's people calling 3 and 4-year-old bucks mature. They're not.
No.
They're middle. I mean, even a really good 4-year-old is just beginning to show you what he's capable of doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of our management tools we use down here, we use photos. That is the best way to age a deer, is having multiple years of pictures of the same deer.
That's right.
And we assume, based on some previous research, that at 4 years old, they're done growing their skeletal structures. Mm-hmm. They're done growing their bones. And then, antlers are a secondary trait, so you have to have extra resources. Well, just like a teenager, once he quits growing his bones, then he starts building out his body. Same way with a buck, Secondary antler have extra nutrition, so that all gets put in the antler. So when we see a buck on camera take a big jump, we assume he's 5 because this was a 4-year-old and 5-year-old. Luckily, with supplemental feed, their home ranges do tend to shrink down here. We have individuals that will be at 10 different feeders, but majority of individuals are only at 1 or 2 feeders in the fall, so we can follow them from year to year. And say, this is the same buck, same antler characteristics, but he gained 20 inches. So, all right, he was 4 last year. Look at his body as well. But we really use that big antler jump as a 4 to 5-year-old.
Yep.
And then we'll follow that deer for 2 or 3 more years. At one time, we were wanting to harvest our trophy deer, our top-end deer, at 8 years old. Due to some of this research, we've done based in showing some natural mortality in these tagged population of deer. We had a tagged population of deer that we never harvested. If they had an ear tag in their ear for this research project, we tried to let them go because we were trying to see when do antlers peak, same age-old question. When do antlers peak? When do they max out? And then natural survival, how many deer do you lose from year to year? Well, we used to try to wait to 8, but we saw there's a pretty good increase in mortality from 7 to 8, probably about a 20% jump. So that's what we're basing it on. So we've backed down. We're harvesting deer we consider 7 years old. But some of them slip through if they break a rack or break a tine. There's very heavy fighting during the rut down here because we try to run around a 1-to-1 sex ratio. And we have a lot of hard fighting, and they'll break tines. So if he breaks a tine, we'll give him another year. But we'd rather do it at 7 than 8 because after 8, you really have a good chance of losing those deer at older age classes after 8. But also, we killed a 13-year-old buck this year. You know, we killed one of those tagged down individuals. That project ended 2 years ago, so now we're actually able to harvest some of those individuals with tags. And we've killed some known-age deer, and it's really interesting to see how far they will go.
That's wild.
They'll make it a long time or can.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was able to harvest a doe this morning, actually, and I think just by looking at teeth, which I know is not 100% accurate, but but just going by,
it's not even 60% accurate.
No, but just by looking at what
she was old.
Said, she was old. I mean, she looked old, and teeth looked old.
When they're gum lining, they're old.
They're old. Yeah, and going back to the whole jawbone, the tooth wear and aging technique, I'm with Matt. I like to use all of the information I have to come up with the best guess on an age estimate. You can use, obviously once the deer's taken, you can look at the jawbone and compare to what you were thinking based off of observations and cameras and that kind of thing. But I have found over the years, and looking at some of the jawbones y'all had of known age deer that were the same age, there's way too much variability in tooth wear and replacement to accurately age deer with any confidence after about 3 years of age.
To a certain age.
To a certain age, exactly.
You can group them.
You can group them, but, if somebody hands me a jawbone, I can say, he looks like he's probably 4, but he could be 3, could be 5.
Yeah, and that's something we use. We have guides that have been down here and helping us. One of our guides has been here for 20 years. Some of the others 4 or 5, but everybody's got experience with harvesting whitetails down here. And if they say the deer's 6 years old on the hoof, based on body characteristics, or 6 plus, 5 plus, and then we come in, the teeth are a little sharper than I thought. I really usually use the guide's explanation just because it doesn't really matter. The deer is, mature or whatever, but to pin it to one age is not, we just try to avoid harvesting the younger age classes.
That's right.
And that's one reason we allow our bucks to get to at least maturity, which, we're calling mature at 5.
Y'all using the pictures is one reason that I, for clients, a lot of them, they don't shoot bucks unless they have good photographic evidence of how old those deer are.
That's right.
If they see a deer they don't know, it's just like,
off limits.
Yeah, we're going to figure this guy out before we mess up and shoot a young deer.
Right.
And that's all it's about. They're just trying to make sure they're not pulling them too young. And
it's different because going back to what you said, land ownership patterns here versus most of the Southeast. I mean, most hunters in Alabama are going to own 40 to 100 acres, or they're going to lease or hunt their uncles or whatever. And it's not going to be a big piece of ground. So it's easy for us to say, oh, man, let's let deer get to 5, 6, 7, 8 years of age. You have to have cooperation from a lot of neighbors to do that in the Southeast.
Yep.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is we're not there.
No.
Especially not in Alabama.
And each, every individual case is different,
That's right.
And if I've got a guest that it's their first time here or a kid and they've never harvested deer, and I ask them, I say, what would you do with that deer if you shot it? And he goes, I'm going to mount it. It's the biggest deer I ever killed. Even if he's 5 or 6, I don't have to wait to 7 or 8. That's the purpose of that deer is for somebody to enjoy it, you know. And if that's what they tell me, then the rules change for each individual. We have set, general rules, but that's nothing's an ultimate.
A lot of it is objective driven.
Now, if it's a deer I thought would be 200, that's not going to happen. But if it's a deer that I thought could go from 150 to 160, it's like, well, if you're happy with them, then that's fine, But that's what you kind of can't take it too seriously. And it, like I said, we're not trying to make a profit from this ranch. We're just trying. It's a hunting ranch, just like a hunting property, investment property that somebody would buy in the Southeast or a lease in the Southeast. It's about having fun and enjoying it. Wildlife management is pretty easy and, like I said, straightforward. People management, that's tough.
That's very tough.
And I deal with that with some of the lease groups that we have here at the ranch. They just have to manage expectations. We recommend that they harvest 5.5 and older deer, but the way we do that is I fly their surveys. I talk to them about how much money they want to spend on supplemental feed, if it's too much or too little. and then I'll issue tags based on that. They get a guaranteed number of tags with the lease, but I'll issue extra or less depending on what their goals are, and as long as I don't think they're going to do anything to hurt the ranch, because it's just long-term leases, but it's three years, so I don't want them to over-harvest where if they do leave, I can't have a herd good for the next group.
That's right.
So that is some of the people management there with dealing with that. But it's fun. It's just it has its challenges, just like everything else.
Yeah, I think in the South, and it may be everywhere, but the biggest thing we have to overcome, and in a lot of places, but especially there, you have the desire to be as serious as you guys are out here. But it's when the deer shows up that desire to be serious changes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, well,
it's like, shoot, man,
I don't know if I really
walk.
want to. I don't really know if I want to let that 3-year-old go.
That's right.
Well, it's kind of similar. It's a little different here because nobody on the family property that we manage ourselves hunts without a guide.
Right.
So the guest never screws up. The guides can screw up.
Right. But that's on them. That's on them.
Yeah. But it's very similar. If you had somebody that was just blatantly shooting stuff and not following the rules, they wouldn't be invited back.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way it would be here as well. But we're just fortunate enough that we can. It's too valuable for us to just turn somebody loose. So we always have guides sitting with them.
Well, and I think
and help them make harvest decisions.
Right.
I think hunting everywhere is headed that way.
Well, your camera's your guide.
Yeah, yeah.
In the Southeast,
y'all are just 25 years ahead of us.
Typical Texas has been that way. High fencing was there, and then supplemental feed, which a lot of the food plots. I mean, Tecumate.
Oh my gosh,
they've developed food plots for
wildlife. When we were
kids.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think the value of wildlife and everything pushes Texas. At the
much
forefront
faster
of
that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think other portions of the country are catching up because hunting. The industry has become so profit-driven over enjoyment-driven. It's become more of a business,
right?
To where it used to not be. It was
correct.
I would consider it more of a lifestyle.
Yes.
When we started,
and
now we've kind of been in the age group that has taken it from lifestyle to business,
right?
And I think that's going to continue to evolve. I mean, obviously it's going to, but.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you said something earlier. Like people get serious until it comes time to not pull the trigger, and it's like, oh well, because people go, well, gosh, I want to get my money's worth out of it. It's cost me X amount of dollars to lease this ground, or whatever. And,
right.
People don't like eating tag sandwiches. That's the deal.
No, and I mean, my family's fortunate enough. We have 700 or 800 acres back home that I help manage with my cousins and stuff. And some of them are meat hunters, and they're just as happy shooting the first deer that comes out as waiting on horns. And I don't get mad at them if that's what they're doing. What I get mad at is sometimes some of the people that ask my opinion, and then they shoot a 2-year-old every year at the end of the season because they say, "Well, I needed meat," and I'm like, "You had how long in Alabama? 90 days to shoot a doe."
Oh my word!
And past does, and they wait till February 8th to go kill a little 6-point, and I needed some meat. And I was like, well, you're killing your trophy deer that you're complaining about not having.
You had a buck that survived
the whole
season, and then take him out
2
of the
days
population.
And I mean, I have some cousins. If they listen to this, sorry, they'll know who they are.
We fight. We all got them.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
It is what it is.
Run a very nice place out here in Texas, in one of the world's, but still. Old buddy down the road, he knows more than I know a lot of times.
No question.
So
and it's always
that's a little frustrating. That's the people management. It's a little frustrating.
Yep.
I have kind of joked about that. Even in school, any of us would go to a doctor, lawyer, whoever, a professional, and we pay them for their opinion, and then we listen to them generally.
Yeah,
we'll go and visit with lots of folks, and they're paying good money for our time. And then you meet with them and like, nah, I don't know if that's what I'm gonna do. I don't think that's right.
Yeah,
right. You're like, okay, well then why am I here?
Yeah.
If you don't think it's right, why did you call me? So it's a struggle sometimes, and that's part of why I left the state. I mean, Matt and I were both in the technical assistance division, and we would do a ton of work writing plans and helping folks design management plans for their property. And you'd call them back, a year or two later, man, how's things going? Nothing much has changed. Mm-hmm. Well, man, why not? What all have y'all been doing? Oh, we really didn't do anything. We didn't change anything.
Right.
Why? Well, we don't really have any help. We don't know who can help us do any of this.
Yeah, that was
we saw that time and time again. Yep. So I was like, well, heck, if nobody's doing it, I'll leave and I'll go do it.
Yeah, right. That's a business opportunity.
Yeah.
You meet with all these people and you tell them what they need to be doing to manage for wildlife, and they're like, we don't know where to turn to get it done. Well, we can fix that.
Right.
Yeah.
We can fix that.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of fortunately, with being associated with A&M Kingsville and some of the research projects that we conduct here at the ranch and other ranches, I know a lot of biologists that work for the state of Texas. Mm-hmm. And they have a managed lands deer permit, kind of like DMAP is in Alabama.
Yep.
And they see a bunch of situations. The properties that follow their prescriptions and kind of help their harvest, they're going. I mean, it's natural human nature. Where are you going to spend more time? You're going to the person that's kind of listening to you and taking your recommendations seriously and working with it, or the guy that just wants tags, and then you don't hear from him until he needs tags next year.
Exactly. Well,
right. That's why I love the private industry, because when I meet some of these landowners, I know the minute I shake their hand if they're going to implement what I recommend.
Right. Yep. You can tell.
You can tell.
Yeah.
And I like seeing projects carried on to completion, and I like seeing people happy.
Right.
So if a guy comes to me and says, this is what I want to accomplish, if we can't, I'll just tell them. Right. But if it's something that I think is achievable, this is what you've got to do. And if you'll listen to me for 3 to 5 years, then we'll be there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I know this is probably y'all's favorite time of the year because y'all are getting pictures right now of landowners that are sending you bucks that they're fortunate enough to get to harvest and stuff.
Absolutely love it.
That's the same thing here. I've been here long enough at this ranch that really it takes 7 or 10 years to see what your personally touched management implications turn into maturity, because we're not the harvest of matured deer. So the first 5 or 6 years here we harvested some nice deer, and it just felt different when it was around year 7. I started seeing bucks that I had watched from, knew that buck was here on this property when was born when I was here managing, and now they've reached maturity. So it's a little bit different then.
Oh, absolutely.
You feel like you actually can see everything through the whole life cycle.
Yep, seeing the fruits of your labor. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard Jeremy say before, like, the most satisfying harvest for him is just a deer that he's had a hand in managing.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily have to really care what's on its head. It's just, is this something that I had a chance to help bring along?
And that's the way I like. Look, don't get me wrong. I love going to Kansas and hunting these Midwest states. If I kill a 200-inch deer in Kansas on public land, that deer does not mean as much to me as a 135 that I kill on a place that I managed in Alabama. Right. It just don't.
That's right.
It's not all about antler score. It's about the process and seeing the fruits of your labor and growing deer to maturity in the area that you're at.
Yeah, just like some of y'all's clients, that's a first-time landowner. When you harvest, it could be a doe or, your first turkey that you kill off of your own place. It means more than anything you've ever done somewhere else. I mean, look, I run with this ranch out here, and y'all have seen some of the bucks and seen some of the bucks that I've let some of my friends shoot and cousins and my dad and them. And I have just as much fun or way more fun trying to kill a 120-inch deer at my home place in Alabama than some of these deer out here. And it's not knocking the management. It's just, when you're on your home turf, it's something special.
It's special.
It is.
Yep. One of these days, hopefully, I'll have some that I can try to hunt.
Same here.
Yeah, that's the ultimate wish.
Yeah.
No, I'm scared to death. If there was a deer on my place, I'd be afraid to shoot it. You know what I mean? It's like, leave them alone. Let them get populated. So.
Yeah. Well, that's part of what I enjoy about what I do in the real estate industry is helping folks buy land and then, get those same pictures. And man, I never thought I would own a piece of ground.
Right.
And here's this deer or turkey my kid killed. That's super rewarding.
Yeah.
To help folks do that.
Yeah, here at the ranch, another big perk for me is, I've got a list somewhere. It's almost 40 individuals, mostly kids, but some adults, some very older adults in their 40s and got their first deer, got their first animal, their first pig, their first javelina, and that's the ones that kind of stick with you and are special.
It is.
No matter
what it's
who
about.
it is. Yeah, and we've done some youth hunts here the last couple of years, and those stick out in my memory. Even bigger than some of the top end deer that we've shot, and that I've been able to guide on type stuff.
Well, I'm not sure that I qualify as a youth anymore, but I was tickled to death yesterday.
First
javelina, man.
First javelina.
That was awesome.
Javelina with archery equipment is pretty cool.
It's fun.
I mean, it's fun. It's fun hunting.
We're very fortunate. It's an extra species. Here in South Texas, we have wild hogs, javelina, and we don't have any exotics here on the ranch, but the whitetails, and that's just kind of when you're in a stand something extra.
else.
There's always something moving.
Right, and we're fortunate enough we don't have a problem with wild hogs. We have very limited surface water, so we have pigs around some tanks and ponds, but they're very controllable. If they get out of hand, we can trap them, or fortunate for us, we can call a helicopter in, and that's even fun in itself to do that.
No doubt.
Absolutely.
No doubt. A lot harder than it looks.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
A lot harder than it looks.
Moving targets.
Yes. Yes.
From a moving vehicle.
Yes. I start saying from a moving vehicle. But I tell you, man, the pilots are awesome that take you up and do that stuff. I can't remember the guy's name, but that flew up for Cody. They let us have at it one day. Yeah, it was a blast.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like I said, no good at it.
Yeah, I've seen.
He's not a good wing shooter either.
Oh man, it's dropping from the top rope there, Mr. Brock.
That's fine.
Call it like I see it.
Yeah. I remember seeing some stuff. I can't remember if it was like History Channel or something, but it was like basically guys shooting out of a helicopter and talking about like the negative lead that you have to give on targets because of you're moving this way, animals or whatever target is moving this way, and you have to put the lead behind instead of in front and stuff. It's just kind of wild.
Right.
Shooting tracers and all kinds of weird stuff. But
yeah, what was so tough with when I did it is they'd carried up a gun with a magnified optic on it.
Right.
That's kind of hard.
Tough.
It's kind of hard.
Yeah, you needed a red dot of reflex up there.
Well, the favorite is to cheat here is to use a shotgun.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely.
Buckshot.
Yeah, with buckshot. It works good on the little pigs and coyotes, but on the big pigs, you might have to hit them once or twice.
Oh, yeah.
It does work.
Yep.
oh man, don't tempt anybody here with a good time.
Right.
No.
We won't be doing that here the next 2 days. We'll be contracting out with a company that does if anybody's interested in it, just YouTube South Texas helicopter deer captures. They've got won't be the same company, but they have some different companies have some incredible videos of them shooting the nets over these animals, and then where we can harvest them.
Man, it's cool.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorite parts of my job is being associated with the university. Some students that have come through here are now the head deer biologist for the state of Virginia, for Texas Parks and Wildlife. Some guys at Mississippi Parks and Wildlife are big that have come through this program. And so that's what I still really love is the research, and I'm very happy to get to share that with you guys this week where y'all are going to get y'all's hands, because we come from Auburn University, and we both might have volunteered a little bit at some of the deer research facilities out there, but you might spend 5 nights darting deer and handle 5 deer. We're going to be handling anywhere from probably 50 to 70 deer tomorrow. Mostly does and fawns this time, but we have done bucks in the past for a couple of research projects. The cool new project we have going on is we've got 200-acre enclosures with 24 does and 8 bucks in each pen, and we're looking at feed types. So we've got 4 pens. All of them have the same number of does and bucks, but we're looking at one that's cottonseed only, one that's protein only, and then 2 that are protein and cottonseed fed simultaneously. But one of them we shut off for a hunting season to simulate a hunting season. So we're shutting those cottonseed and protein. We're removing it for 60 to 90 days to simulate a hunting season. The other we're feeding year round. And so this is year 1 of a 5-year project. So we're going to be catching these deer for the next 5 years and taking body measurements, mostly looking at body condition and fawn production. So we'll actually have some ultrasound machines out there to see if these does have been pregnant, because we're about 3 weeks post prime rut here in South Texas. Our rut's roughly December 20th through December 30th is the prime peak of the rut here. Okay. So, we're about 3 weeks post out, and I don't know how they can see it. It's first year doing it, but it would be kind of neat to see if they can see that embryo implanted already. And I think they can take a blood. They're drawing blood, so I think they can tell from the blood if they're pregnant as well.
They can check your back out for you with that ultrasound machine.
May have to.
Yeah. We've Matt Brock's had a little bit too much fun this week. We've worn him out and got him down in the back from sites twisting around trying to look at too many different bucks.
I guess so.
Yeah,
Yep.
Say about
got
broke,
too much to look at.
about broke
They've
his
hurt me.
neck.
Whiplash.
Hurt me.
Yeah, he's got bad back and a bad tooth. So,
I do.
He's already.
Hey, and thankfully it's the quietest he's been in quite a while.
I know. You know when something's wrong when I'm not talking. And so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, look, they didn't hunt this morning. It's like, man,
Nope.
old Brock must feel bad if he's not wanting to get up and
Yeah.
kill stuff.
Yep. And I mean, I guess it snuck up on me, but I'm fairly certain I let myself get dehydrated yesterday, and I felt terrible.
Yeah, that's
this
not happening
morning,
today
too.
with our Fiji water.
No, Matt hooked us up with the
Best water.
good
Stream
crisp
cold.
agua.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, man, we've had a blast. Obviously looking forward to the capture tomorrow, and I don't know, we may get a chance to recap some of that or something like that a little bit later. But I did want you to kind of, you've already sort of alluded to some of the stuff and talked about it a little bit, but you said that the capture is an ongoing project. This will be something that happens for the next 5 years. You're capturing deer every year from here in the next 5 years.
Right. This first year's data, we only put these deer in these pens back in March of last year. So this first year's data is kind of just to get the deer associated with each type of feed treatment. We were able to catch individuals from multiple pastures across the ranch. And then, so some of them had been exposed to feed, some of them had never been exposed to feed, some of them had been exposed to cottonseed and protein, and some of them cottonseed, but no protein. So we were able to randomize the deer caught from all across the ranch, spread them throughout these 4 enclosures, and then this first year's really just been getting them used to that feed treatment.
Gotcha.
So that's going to be neat. I mean, the students, we might have y'all talk to 1 or 2 of them if you want to. They can tell you a lot more about the project design, but it's been funded by the ranch. It's going to be conducted here, and it's just a history of the ranch that we have with a cooperative working with the Cesar Clayburgh Wildlife Institute over at Texas A&M Kingsville. I got my master's degree on one of these projects. It was a 15-year project. The Comanche Faith project was one that they had worked with, and it was looking mostly at habitat, different numbers of deer in different pens, and so we had, going to that project a little bit, there was 6 treatments. There was high density, medium density, and low density, and there was 6 pens on 2 different ranches. One of them was fed, one of them was unfed at each density. So you had low density on one ranch, fed, and low density unfed on each ranch. And we were looking at differences. What does this supplemental feed, by upping your deer numbers, are you actually degrading your habitat? And that was a 10-year phase of that project. And then the second 5-year phase of that project was looking at number of deer and feeder density and if kind of more social dynamics, looking at how number of deer competing over a feeder, how that affected. Does every deer get access if you have too much competition, if your density is too high? Food resource, which out here would be feeders, in the southeast could be food plots or something of that nature. So we did that, and that's kind of where I got my master's. Like I said, I was looking at camera surveys in there, but I had to help with guys following and doing all the vegetation surveys. So that was a big cooperative project. And then past that, this ranch has conducted a east-west Yana capture project for years, where we're looking at age structure of bucks, when do antlers peak. That's when we were tagging those deer as fawns and letting them run throughout the whole life, and looking at when do antlers peak, natural mortality, and then 2 different types of management. We were looking to see, does this management benefit this management? So we've got a long history of being a research ranch, and that's kind of what's kept my job interesting, kept me focused and going. And it's kind of neat to see some of the students that have come through here now be working at other states and private biologists and all different aspects. A couple guys run some ranches in the area. So been here a long time. Didn't expect to stay out here this long. Come from Alabama, went to Auburn, and was hoping to get back that way, but things just have worked out where they've kind of held me down out here. And
We're glad you stayed.
It's been a benefit. Like I said, I've been talking to Jeremy, trying to get him out here for a deer capture for at least 5 years now, and we had some mutual friends that ran another ranch, and would come down, but this is their first time making it all the way down to our ranch, so we got to see some cool stuff. We actually have part of the border wall that was constructed on our ranch, and that was kind of a neat side trip down there to see that.
Really cool.
And what was more impressive was catching a plecostomus in the Rio Grande.
And of course, Matt Brock's off catching exotics over there.
Yeah. I like the wall better.
He caught this armored catfish by hand in the Rio Grande.
I sure did.
An exotic, which we probably need to turn that into the state, because I don't know if it's been documented in the Rio.
We'll let them know.
We'll let them know.
Yeah, that's right. Wild, man. It's just been a whole lot of fun hanging out down here and just getting to see what all, obviously we love the wildlife and all that kind of stuff, but getting an idea of what all you guys are doing and research and, everybody really kind of stretches beyond just here too.
Right.
And you've got a whole lot of people involved in making this happen. So it's just cool to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alabama guys over there, you got anything for Mr. Matt?
Shoot, I'm good.
No, man.
Yep.
I think we covered a pretty good bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Matt,
We can't cover it like he did.
No, it was awesome.
We've been talking for 2 days, so I was a little worried before we started this. I'd already ran out of stuff to talk about, but I kind of have a spiel. For us, it gets a little bit like Groundhog Day during guiding season, because the guests change, but the place is the same, and I kind of go through my same story and same tour, but it's good. I've got it perfected now after about 14 years of doing this.
We've all said, hey, listen, if we ask you a question and you don't want to answer it, just be like, shut up. Because you're going to hear the same questions over and over again. Like, what's that? What's this? And, whatever.
Uh-huh.
So, but we do appreciate you having us out here. This has been so much fun, and, can't wait for the capture tomorrow. And I'm going to try to weasel my way on that helicopter somehow.
There you go.
We'll strap you to the bottom of it.
Yeah, they might
strap you to it.
Yeah,
you guys leave us a comment if you want to see me dangle from a helicopter or something. But
we have to keep Matt away from that, because he'll somehow get hurt.
I'm not getting on a helicopter.
We're not going to get you anywhere around one.
No, I need to be well away from it.
That's funny. But we do appreciate it, and we appreciate you guys listening in on our podcast. It seems like lately we've had just an influx of DMs and comments and just positive stuff that you guys have sent our way. We really appreciate that, because we try our best. We're not great, but we try our best to bring about important, interesting conversations and things that you guys care about. So. And always, this thing is not possible without our sponsors and stuff. So I want to give a shout out to them. We have Darton, who has outfitted us especially for this hunt. We've been slinging.
Yes, we have.
So we've been sending some arrows down range. So we really, really appreciate Randy and Darton. You guys saw him on the last episode, and he's just been wonderful for us. And Tethered, Vitalize, First South, and we've just got some really cool sponsors that have allowed us to do this kind of stuff. So we appreciate that. Appreciate you, and Matt, thanks so much, man.
Okay,
yeah,
been a pleasure.
And we will see you guys on the next one.
Peace out.
Out.